Welcome to the Beer Frontier, and my name is Gage.
And I'm Robert, and as ever, we're here for the beer.
We're going to focus in this episode on English pale ales. We'll visit Ben the home brewer and see what he's up to.
We will review a couple of local English-style pale ales.
I'll go out to a microbrewery and see what they're doing.
Enzo will cook with English-style pale ales.
And we'll finish up looking at an English pale ale from England.
From England?
From England.
Okay, well, given all that, Gage, can you actually tell me what is an English-style pale ale?
Robert, an English-style pale ale is an ale, so it's top fermented, so it has some nice fruity esters from the high fermentation temperature, and it has low to medium maltiness, and it has medium to medium high hops. And the critical thing for me is the balance and harmony between the hops and the malts. That's what we're looking for. Good beer.
Okay, I'm getting a sense that there's a little confusion around, about what a beer style actually is.
Well, it is written down, but the beer styles are constantly evolving. And remember last week, we criticised the local pilsners compared to the imported pilsner.
Yes.
Well, the same thing happens with all of the beer styles. It's one person's interpretation. We live in this fully free and democratic society in Australia, and you can call anything you like.
Yeah, so I get that feeling from Australian beers, because if you think you've got, Victoria bitter, Melbourne bitter, 4X bitter, Tooheys red bitter, a whole lot of bitters, which they're not really bitters, are they?
No, they're not bitters, they're not ales, they're actually lagers. But this is for historical or marketing reasons. When they first made beer in Australia, they were all ales. And as over the years, the recipes were reformulated to lagers, they kept the brand names.
Yeah.
But it's worse if you go down to Tasmania. So Cascade Pale Ale, not a bad beer, but it's actually a lager.
Yeah.
But Cascade Amber Ale, not a bad beer, for Foster's, that's actually an ale.
It is actually an ale.
It is actually an ale,
Okay.
yeah. So it's all over the place.
Yeah, okay. Well, given that pale ale can be just about anything, let's go and see what Ben, the home brewer, is up to.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to water. You might think it's a simple topic. Well, it is, but there's a few things you need to know about it first. So let's have a look at our system. Here we have our, well, you and I probably call it an urn, okay? But in actual fact, brewers call this a hot liquor tank, just to confuse you. And they don't call water water, they call it liquor, because they consider that it's some form of treated water. So this is not an urn, this is not a kettle, it's a hot liquor tank. So if you ever read in the homebrew text, at least that'll clear that one up. Treated water, how do we treat it? Well, really quite simple. In a brewery, they would actually use carbon filters to try and get rid of any of the nasties and chlorine in their beer if they want to. Right here in my brew house, I simply pour my water out the night before, cover it with a towel, and that means that the chlorine wafts off the water, and I pretty much end up with a pretty good base water to start with. Treatment of water, pretty simple. In the case of most beers, we need to add a bit of flavour, and that comes in the way of salts. There's a few simple salts you can add, and I'm sure we'll talk about those later on sometime in the series. We simply add those probably later on to the water as it hits the mash tun, which is something I'll show you afterwards. So this is our thermostat. This, if we're using an electric hot liquor tank, is actually essential. This is going to switch on the water, or more to the point, switch it off when it gets to a desired temperature. I'm using an electric liquor tank at the moment. You can, of course, use gas if you want to. Advantages, disadvantages to each. I would say that gas is probably cheaper. Okay. The advantage of electricity, of course, is it's simpler. It's just like turning a kettle on. I turn this thing on couple of hours or maybe an hour and a half before I'm ready to mash in. So quite straightforward. If you had a gas version up here, you'd have to have a gas burner, and you'd probably put another temperature probe like this one in there to see what temperature you're at. It's pretty simple stuff. After that then, we're going to move on to our mashing.
Welcome back to the keg room. English Pale Ales. Well, we have two beers here, two local beers which the brewers have described as pale ales. And we think they're probably more English style than American style. Of course, the brewers may disagree. So, English Pale Ales, low to medium malt characters, medium to medium high hop characters with some nice fruity esters on the nose. But the critical thing for us is the balance, how well integrated the hop flavours are with the malt flavours. The first beer is from Barron's. Yeah, well, Barron's are an interesting crowd because they don't want to be a craft brewer, they don't want to be a microbrewery, they don't even want to be a little small-scale independent. They want world domination. They want to convert themselves into a brand of global brewing. They want to be like a Foster's or a Kirin. So let's not worry about their pretensions or their future. We'll worry about what the beer is in the glass. But first I'll tell you about Kosciuszko, because Kosciuszko's different again. Kosciuszko is a big brewer pretending to be a little brewer. I say pretending, that's maybe a bit harsh. But Kosciuszko Brewery is part of Malt Shovel. Malt Shovel's part of Tooheys. Tooheys is part of Lion Nathan. Lion Nathan is part of Kirin. So they've got this little brewery at Jindabyne that brews 600 litres at a time, but from a huge Japanese conglomerate. So, Robert, what do you think of the Barons?
The Baron. Well, the first thing that happened when I had a look at the Baron was I was struck by the pretension of the label. And I thought to myself, that's all a bit poncy. You've got all this Art Deco, pseudo Art Deco stuff all over it. And I thought, well, I wonder if the beer lives up to that. And it doesn't really. The beer is a bit disappointing, really. It's got a sort of Band-Aid Vegemite sort of smell to it. To me, it's a bit unpleasant. It's a bit thin, a bit thin on the ground, I think. And yeah, it's not that pleasant to beer, really. I'll give that 2 stars.
Two things, I agree with you. It lacks body, so it's like it's not all malt. It's use sugars using adjunct for economical reasons. That's a belief. It may or may not be right, of course. The second thing is it's got a metallic taste in it. This isn't very nice beer at all. I'm disappointed by the thinness, but that finish. It's not a hop character, it's a metallic type taste. 1.5 stars out of 5. Let's move on to the Kosciuszko, Robert.
The Kosciuszko, yeah. Well, the first surprise with this beer was that there's quite a pronounced, well, to me, it's a passion fruit sort of smell and taste to it. That's first up, is the first impression I get. The hop malt balance is not too bad. It's quite a reasonable beer in many ways. In fact, I think if you bought a 6-pack of this and took it to a party, you'd end up having quite a good time. So it's a better beer for me, 2.5 stars.
Yeah, it's definitely a better beer. It's got a bit more body. Those fruity esters, passion fruit, tropical fruit are desired by brewers when ales are fermented at warmer temperatures, adding complexity to the beer. I find that's quite pleasant. But I think it's overhopped even for an English pale ale. Just an opinion. Yeah. But, you know, old Wolfgang Blass with red wine used to go, no wood, no bloody good. Yeah. So it seems to me that some Australian brewers go, unless I put a lot of really expensive hops in my beer, it's no good. And I think this is wrong. I think what they should be looking for is balance. So I think it's overhopped, but it's okay. Yeah, I'd give this 2 out of 5.
Yeah, okay. But don't take our word for it. Look at our website, thebeerfrontier.com.au, and look, see where we bought the beer from and how much we paid for it.